Good evening. Members of the public are encouraged to participate in meetings by accessing the webcast at www.cityofclovis.com/agendas, or 2, providing written comments on the same website, 3, participating by phone, or 4, attending our meeting here at the council chambers. I will call the meeting to order, and our flag salute will be led by Bob Whalen. I was going to say no. Don't jinx me.
All right, please join me in pledging allegiance to our flag and our republic. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Ashbeck. Here. Councilmember Bessinger.
Here.
Councilmember Monutua.
Here.
Councilmember Whalen.
Here.
And Mayor Flores.
I am here. Our first item of business is our presentations, and today we'll have a proclamation declaring June as Men's Health Month, and it'll be read by Councilmember Whalen.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't believe there's anybody here to receive this particular proclamation, so I'll just read it into the record. This is a proclamation declaring June as Men's Health Month. Whereas despite advances in medical technology and research, men continue to live an average of 5 years less than women.
We'll miss you.
With Native American and African American men having the lowest life expectancy. And whereas COVID-19 variants continue to spread across the country, with the Centers for Disease Control reporting that males are more likely to die from this pandemic. And whereas educating the public and health care providers about the importance of a healthy lifestyle and early detection of male health problems will result in reducing rates of mortality from disease. And whereas fathers who stay connected to their children and maintain a healthy lifestyle are role models for their children and have happier, healthier children. And whereas Men's Health Network worked with Congress to develop a National Men's Health Awareness Period as a special campaign to help educate men, boys, and their families about the importance of positive health attitudes and preventative health practices. And whereas the Men's Health Month website has been established at www.menshealthmonth.org and features resources, proclamations, and information about awareness, events, and activities, including Wear Blue Day. You have to go to www.wearblueday.com, I think, to figure out what day that is. And whereas Clovis Men's Health Month will focus on a broad range of men's health issues, including heart disease, mental health, diabetes, and prostate, testicular, and colon cancer. And whereas the citizens of Clovis are encouraged to increase awareness of the importance of a healthy lifestyle, regular exercise, and medical checkups. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Clovis City Council does declare June as Men's Health Month. In witness thereof, I hereunto set my hand and cause the official seal of the City of Clovis to be affixed the 6th day of June 2022, and it's signed by our healthy mayor, Jose Flores.
Okay, say one thing you're going to do to be healthy this month.
I do stuff every month.
Give me one answer.
I'm not doing enough.
Just answer the question.
Okay, I'm going this month, June. Let's see.
This is why you die sooner, because you make it all so hard. It was just a little moment of levity.
Oh.
Joe.
I'm going to see my doctor to follow up on.
Excellent.
No.
You don't really want to hear our answer.
I do. That's a very good answer, Drew.
My wife constantly violates my HIPAA rights. I don't need you doing it too.
Vol.
Sugar.
Less sugar.
Less
See, that was not hard. Too late. Okay, go ahead.
He jogs like every day, and he makes sure that our counter is working.
He just runs.
That's right.
He just runs back and forth and watches his own number.
The goal is to be number one every day. You have to get out at 4:30 in the morning for that.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Okay, we'll move on to public comments. This is the opportunity for the members of the public to address the City Council on any matter within the City Council's jurisdiction that is not listed on the agenda. In order for everyone to be heard, please limit your comments to 5 minutes or less, or 10 minutes per topic. Anyone wishing to be placed on the agenda for a specific topic should contact the City Manager's office and submit correspondence at least 10 days before the desired date of appearance. there anyone in the public wishing to make a public comment on any item that is not on the agenda? Okay, we'll move on. How about the web?
No.
Okay. What's that? We did have one correspondent. What's that?
That's for item 11,
For item.
the written correspondence.
Next item, ordinance and resolutions. With respect to the approval of resolutions and ordinances, the reading of the title shall be deemed a motion to waive a reading of the complete resolution or ordinance, and unless there is a request by a council member that the resolution or ordinance be read in full, further reading of the resolution or ordinance shall be deemed waived by unanimous consent of the council. Next item is consent calendar. Items considered routine in nature are to be placed upon the consent calendar. They will all be considered and voted upon in one vote as one item unless the council member requests individual consideration. A council member's vote in favor of the consent calendar is considered and recorded as a separate affirmative vote in favor of each action listed. Motions in favor of adoption of the consent calendar are deemed to include a motion to waive the reading of any ordinance or resolution on the consent calendar. For adoption of ordinances, only those that have received a unanimous vote upon introduction are considered consent items. Our consent items are from 2 to 7 today, and I believe we're going to pull item number 7. One Councilmember Whalen had questions or comments, and there's a conflict with Councilmember Bessinger. So, any other items wishing to be pulled by council? Nope. Anyone in the public wishing to pull an item from the consent calendar? On the web?
No.
Okay, so bring it back to council.
I'll make a motion for items that we approved, items 2 through 6 on the consent calendar.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 So it's a 5-0 for items 2 through 6. And now we will hear item 7.
I think I'm just going to abstain. I'm allowed to be up here now.
Okay.
You want me just to ask my question?
Sure.
So, that Dry Creek Park area, you know, has had some, pretty significant tearing to that, I don't know what you call it. It's kind of a rubber seal.
Pour in place is what we call it.
What do you call it?
Pour in place?
Pour in place. And, so we're going to be putting new pour in place there at the playground area and then also in the, workout, stage, I'll call them stages there, or stations. It seems as shortly after all that pour in place went in place, that it started to get tore up pretty quickly, and I don't know what was causing it to be torn up. And I just wanted some understanding of, why this is going to be a different, result or outcome than what we've had from the original.
Yeah, this is a new and improved spec, and so the product is a Supreme product. It's smaller, granular than it was out there before, so it's meant to last a little longer. It's the same stuff we used at Pasatiempo recently, and that one's been holding up pretty good so far. It's been 1 year on that.
Okay.
And this has got at least a 5-year warranty on it. I don't remember the exact warranty, but it's at least 5 years.
Okay,
And,
that's good to know.
there's some maintenance techniques we can get to extend the life of it as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any further questions regarding this item for staff? And do we need a report from staff? Okay, so any questions from the public present here today of staff regarding item 7? Any from the web?
No.
So Lynn,
I'll make a motion that we approve item number 7 in the consent calendar.
I'll second.
a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I just noticed, Prindeville, would you? Okay, that's how I remember you. We were both kids, about the same time. Anyway, did you come here for a public comment or? Oh, no,
Okay.
okay, that's an item.
I just want to make sure you didn't come for the public comment, because you just missed it, so that's why I checked it. You're welcome.
And Mayor, before we move on, if I could, just for the record, note that the previous vote was 4-0 with Councilmember Bessinger abstaining due to his conflict.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're item 8. Consider approval of resolution approving various actions related to the proposed general tax ballot measure for the November 8th, 2022 general municipal election. And the report will be given by our City Clerk, Carrie Shaw.
Thank you, Mayor. The item before council tonight is a resolution approving the 5 action items listed above in order to place the proposed general tax measure on the November 8th, 2022 election ballot. Back in January, the City Council had formed a Citizens Advisory Committee and appointed 25 individuals to the committee to evaluate the staffing levels of the police department, to determine if additional funding is needed, and to identify what kind of city they wanted to live in. The committee met for 6 meetings from January to April and presented its findings to the City Council at a joint meeting on April 6th. Following up on the subject, the Council held a workshop at the May 9th City Council meeting to discuss the next steps in addressing the issue the Police Department is currently facing and the recommendations made by the committee. At the meeting, the Council came to a consensus to pursue a 2% general tax increase to the city's transient occupancy tax, or hotel tax, to be voted on during the November 2022 election. If this ballot measure is approved by the voters, the TOT will increase from 10% to 12%. Staff is now returning with a resolution to approve the following items in order to place the measure on the November ballot. The first item for approval is to call the special municipal election to present the proposed tax measure. Once the special election for the ballot measure is called, staff will be able to move forward with the other action items required to place the measure on the ballot. Secondly, staff is requesting the consolidation of the special municipal election for the tax measure with the general municipal election for the candidates and with the statewide general election at the November 8th, 2022 election. Back in 2017, the City Council had approved an ordinance changing the election dates from March of odd years to November of even years beginning this year, 2022, to comply with SB 415. This will be our first on-cycle election to be consolidated with the statewide general election. Additionally, staff is requesting authorization to contract services with the Fresno County Clerk and Elections Division to conduct the special election for the tax measure. The Fresno County Clerk has conducted our elections since 2007 without incident, and staff is recommending that we continue to work with the County Clerk and the Elections Division as they are very well versed and capable of managing the election. Next, staff is also seeking consideration and approval from the Council for the proposed ballot measure description that was provided in the draft resolution and on the screen. There is a 75-word limit that we must stay within when crafting the description. Once the language is finalized and approved, staff will return at the next City Council meeting on June 13th to introduce an ordinance which will amend Chapter 3.3 of the Clovis Municipal Code relating to the transient occupancy tax. The proposed ordinance amending the TOT rate in the municipal code will be conditioned upon approval of the voters in the November election. We'll continue with the presentation for now, but we'll come back to review the proposed language and give time for council discussion. The last action requesting council approval is to authorize the city attorney to prepare the impartial analysis of the measure. In accordance with Elections Code Section 9280, the City Council may direct the city attorney to prepare an impartial analysis of the measure showing the effect of the measure on the existing law and the operation of the measure. The analysis will include a statement indicating whether the measure was placed on the ballot by petition signed by the requisite number of votes or by the City Council, in this case, by the City Council. The analysis will also be printed in the voter's pamphlet preceding the arguments for and against the measure, and it will not exceed 500 words in length. With that, staff is recommending Council to approve the resolution approving the items listed above on the screen in order to place the proposed measure on the November election ballot. And I'd also like to mention that this item will require a 4/5 approval vote to move forward with placing the measure on the ballot. This concludes my presentation. At this time, staff can take any questions from Council, or we can begin discussion of the proposed ballot description.
I have questions for staff. Drew?
We're calling this a public safety improvement measure, but we're not, does this require 50% plus one or 66% plus one?
It would be a general tax, so just the simple majority, 50% plus one.
And we anticipate the increase providing approximately 500,000. Is that 500,000 in addition to what we were getting before, or?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, that's the only questions I have. Thank you.
Did we decide on 2% only?
Yes.
I was very interested in seeing what 3% would be, or 4%. Just kind of, you know, is it kind of 250,000 per percent? Is that sort of the rough estimate?
And one of the reasons we made that recommendation was because that would bring us into parity with the city of Fresno.
Okay, that was the reason. Okay, thanks.
No further questions. I'll open it to the public. Anyone in the public wishing to comment on this item regarding the transient occupancy tax?
Good evening. Greg Newman, 325 Pulaski. I want to talk real quickly on behalf of the Citizens Advisory Committee that was appointed by the council, and that was the recommendation from the committee that we did feel that we needed more sworn officers on the streets, and also the May 19th meeting when we talked about the TOT 2% increase. So we're definitely in support of that. I am also the vice chair of the Clovis Tourism Advisory Committee, and we did discuss this also with that group, and we were in agreement that being the safest city in the valley outweighed the 2% additional. And third, I was also at the hoteliers meeting, I think 2 weeks ago, and we talked about this increase with the hoteliers, and they all agreed that the 2% was worth being the safest city in the valley. So, you know, some of the bigger groups, you know, they talked about, you know, we were 2% less than Fresno, but at the end of the day, these groups want to be in a safe city. So, from all the different various committees that I sit on, it's been unanimous that we support this increase.
Thank you, Greg. Anyone else present? Okay. Anyone on the web?
No.
Okay, so we bring it back to the council. We have 5 items, I would think, separately. And
Mayor, do we want to talk about, I had questions specifically just on this language, so I know that we kind of went to the public before we got to discuss this, but
Sure.
Did you want to present first, Carrie, and then we'll ask questions, or do you want us to address?
You already presented, right?
Yeah, the presentation's done, so you can go ahead and discuss.
She did it as a whole. So if you have questions regarding the language, we need to hear it.
So the new language is what is here, huh? That is in the handout. Okay. My question is with regards to, it's a general tax. Will this language be able to withstand a challenge, because it is specific in its language? And so I just wanted to make sure, because I know that this is our intent, but because it's written this way, technically this 2% can go to anything in the general fund, even though it's written this way. So, but this language can withstand any challenges to it. Just want to make sure of that.
2 things. One is, yes, the monies can be spent anywhere in the general fund, and I'm going to defer to the city attorney to comment on not being a special.
Yeah, thanks, John. Just to clarify, so we had received feedback from the Fresno County Elections Office as of late Friday after the agenda went out, with some questions about the proposed ballot text that was in the original resolution. So we tweaked that. There's a question about 75 words, whether the title that we had was included in the 75 words or not. After further research and discussion with the county, we came to the conclusion that at least the title that we have up there is considered in the 75 words. So we had to tweak that. If we want to keep the title, then we needed to tweak some of the language in the the measure language. It would withstand, the way it's currently drafted, I think it would withstand a challenge. If someone was to say, hey, wait a second, it only received 60% of the vote, that was really a special tax measure, so it's not approved. I think with the reference to other city services is sufficient to withstand and make it clear that it's a general tax. Now, if you want to be more specific that it's general, we could even add that in, you know, a general tax. We could remove some of the other language about specific public safety services, so to speak, but that's really up to you all, how you want the measure to be crafted. The way it currently reads, it is exactly 75 words. So you should know, for purposes of counting words on a ballot, the elections code has a provision, and proper nouns such as the city of Clovis is considered one word. So when we use the city of Clovis, that's considered one word. So that up there is exactly 75 words as it's currently drafted. So if we want to add stuff, we got to take others away. The hyphenated words as well are considered two words. But we can tweak it however you want tonight, and we can work with the county elections office to make sure we're within that 75-word limit.
No, I will defer to the expertise of the staff with regards to the language itself. I just want to make sure that, I know it's a general tax, but the language is very specific, and so I would just worry that it may, but on the personal side, I like it because that's the intent of what we want, but I know that other councils in the future may be able to use this 2% anywhere they want. My next question is, what is the process for, where is it? Until ended by voters. How is that? Because we put it on, it was the council, and so how does the voters end this 2% in the future? Do they need to bring it back up through the same process, or is it something different so that way it's clear to our citizens that if and when they want to end this 2%, here's how you do it?
I'm assuming that if 10 years from now the voters wanted to end it, they would follow the same process as far as amending it from the 12 to the 10%, and then go through the same process. They can, and then Scott, I don't believe that would require a vote. It would be an ordinance amendment.
Well, it would require a vote, and so I can't speak to that. So there's two things that are required in a tax measure. Number one, we have to, the measure must state the anticipated revenue that we're expected to generate. So we have that approximate annual 500,000. The other thing it's supposed to include, and you may also be familiar, there's been some recent, I guess, bills at the state legislature to require that tax measures provide more specificity on sunset dates. So we're not proposing a sunset date on this, so we're not proposing that it be a 10-year tax or a 20-year tax. But again, the reference to until ended by voters is sufficient to withstand at least what some of the proposed ballots that are being considered by the state. That would be sufficient to make it clear to the voters that it's going to go on indefinitely until it's ended by the voters, but there's no specific 10-year or 20-year term. And the way that it would be ended by the voters would be the way that this measure is coming to you. So a future council could say, you know what, we're tired of the 2% increase. We're going to put a measure on the ballot to end that 2% increase, and then the voters would have to approve it. Or on the other side, the voters could say we're tired of the 2%, and so we're going to have a citizen-initiated ballot measure to end that 2%. But either one of those two ways would be the way that it would be ended.
Thank you. Will we anticipate or plan to do any polling at all, John, with regards to this?
With the timing, I don't think we'd recommend polling. We could do some outreach. Basically, it would be education, but not advocacy. And it's basically governed by the FPPC. So we can educate, but we can't advocate.
And then lastly, what can we do individually versus as a city, as individual council members with regards to this measure?
So as John had mentioned, the city is prohibited from spending city resources or city money on advocating for or against a ballot measure. So council members can do so individually. However, we can't expend city money or use city resources to do that. So if you want to do it on your own time and on your own resources, you know, I wouldn't suggest you send a blast email from your city email account, either for or against it. But if you have a personal Facebook account or something of that nature, you're out and about town and you want to speak to the fact that you may support it or be against it, you can certainly do so.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a comment. So I have a question. Contrary, I don't like the language, and the reason is,
First or the second?
either one, is I feel like what it says is all we need to fix public safety is $500,000. So if we ever want to do anything else in the future, someone's going to go, well, wait, you did this one, and now you want more. I think, I don't know exactly the right language, but to me, it's almost like the sentence needs to be like, shall we do this? It'll be going to this, this, and this, and public safety can be one of them. And we as a council could commit that's where it's going. But I feel like this sets us up to fail in any future sales tax measure around public safety particularly. So I am not interested in this language, and I really don't like to do wordsmithing but I mean, I feel like, I think it's the wrong question. I think it's about, shall we increase it? Nobody cares if the hotel tax goes up 2% because I'm not sleeping. I'm not paying that mostly. So I just think the question could be more direct, and what we're going to do with it could be at the end, general this, repairs of this, public safety, I don't know, something to that effect. I think we get one chance to raise taxes for public safety, and this is not it. This is a moment in time to do a small thing. I want to do it, but I don't want to lead with public safety. Just my 2 cents on that.
Mayor? Go ahead. Thank you. So, I understand Councilmember Ashbeck's point. I think that there's almost like a risk, though, of whether this one will be passed if we don't reference some public safety aspects to it. And so, if it turns out that this one doesn't pass, then I think there'll be caution on any future council recommending a public safety improvement measure of any kind. So now that, again, doesn't preclude a citizens committee from pushing something forward, but I do believe that if this doesn't pass, then any future measure is unlikely to pass as well, unless we kind of call this out as public safety, because we know from, you know, the conversations that we've had with the Citizens Advisory Committee, and I think just really our daily conversations with people and what we have come to stand for in this community has drawn people who are in favor of public safety to live here. So we probably need to figure out how to call that out, and maybe that was, you know, the author's intent in kind of highlighting the public safety aspect of it. So it's kind of a choice that we have to make, and generally what I would prefer is that we at least get over this first hump, and then later on we can tackle whatever that second hump may be. I'm not so sure that people will recollect 2 years in the past that there was a public safety 2% increase for that hotel tax. I think that will kind of be forgotten, because traditionally people don't have a long-term memory on these issues. Some will.
He can't.
I won't be able to.
He won't be able to.
That's why you voted for me for judge. So anyway, those are my thoughts. I think we get over this first hump, as a community, and then perhaps maybe we can take something else on. But I don't want to discount your comments, because I think it is something to be weighed from a strategic perspective.
Sure, make one comment.
I think, Lynn, I think your point is well taken, and maybe, and I'm just been playing with the words, where we say to maintain and improve public safety services, to, as an interim measure, to augment. I'm trying to come up with words where we're explaining to people, I used the term low-hanging fruit, which is a little flippant, but this is the quickest and easiest way for us to get funding to the police department. It's not what we want. It's not as much as they need, but it's a start. And if we can come up with some words, I mean, I think Bob's right. We could leave it like this, and I think it would pass on its face. I do think that potentially some people might say, well, you're trying to pull a fast one on us. You did the 2%, and now it's this. I don't think they get much traction, but I certainly don't want in 2 years to have that issue. I mean, I'm sitting here, I'm trying to brainstorm some language where we're talking about this as an interim step to get to where we want to go, but then we're kind of opening up that can of worms too. I don't know, any wordsmith up here can help me out?
Well, so I think one thing we've learned over the years from Measure C, not just this one, but in previous years, that taxes that are sort of, it does everything, don't do well. People want to pay for something. So I get that. But I mean, I wonder if I feel like this is, by the time I figure out what you're asking me, you've talked about gangs and drugs, and it does a lot of stuff, and it's only $500,000. So it doesn't reconcile. So maybe it's just something like, to provide an additional $500,000 in annual revenue to support Clovis public safety, blah, blah, and blah, blah, shall the city of Clovis increase the blah, blah, blah. Something to that effect. I mean, to be more forthright, it's just additional $500,000 to support something, not to sound like public safety improvement measures. Sounds like I'm promising a lot, and they're not going to see a lot for $500,000. I'm sorry to say it that way, but I mean, right, we're not going to have an instant decrease in crime, and then Kurt's not, where'd Kurt go? What are you doing over there? Get up here. No, I'm just kidding. But I mean, I think it's going to take a while. So there may be a way to be a little more direct, a little less about what we're asking. So something like that might work for me. I hear the points about we should say something about public safety. I just don't want to put it all on the table for $500,000. I just don't think I think that's not honest. I think that's not honest language. I mean, we're not dishonest.
How about in the first sentence says to maintain and improve public safety services. We strike out maintain and improve. We say to continue improving public safety services. And we're talking about the ball is going to keep rolling.
I think the thing that's so worrisome is ballot language is an art. People poll and test, and is that word, you like that word? I don't like that. I mean, we don't have that kind of time. So I worry a little bit about, so maybe, but I don't know. I'll offer mine is just still up there.
This is going to pass. I believe that this is going to pass as worded. And you're right, we do have a pretty short time frame. And the wordsmithing, it's going to be probably 6 one way, half dozen the other. I don't want to reiterate what I said before. I don't think that this is going to compromise any future. I mean, it might be. If there's a real significant organized opposition to, like, say, for example, a sales tax increase to fund public safety, then the opponents are going to say, hey, we just, and they will bring that to the attention of the voter. But if they, so I just don't think that there's going to be any significant opposition in the future to a public safety tax, sales tax measure, if this council chooses to put that forward. but, you know, who knows? I mean, there could be somebody who's opposed to it strongly. They'll make a run at it. But I think we just need to get over this first hump. And, you know, my position has been, and why I thought that the TOT was a good move, was that I am of the opinion that we have committed, we have a budget that's in really good shape right now. We have committed to hiring 3 patrol officers every year, at least for the next 5 years. That will, I think if we are able to stay on that track, there may be no need, and I know that this is something that we don't maybe agree on or even are sure of, but there may be no need for an additional tax measure in the future, particularly as CalPERS starts to round off and, you know, drop in the future. And frankly, you know, I don't like inflation. It's going to have an impact all across the board, but one of the areas that it is going to have an impact is we are going to have increased sales taxes as a result of inflation because, as you know, our sales tax comes from a percentage of the sales that take place. So, anyway, let's focus on what we have here tonight in front of us and see if we can get this approved and on the ballot and move forward. Otherwise, you know, we could get wrapped up in the details, and this isn't even going to be on the ballot.
Still one?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. It was my concern from the get-go that by having this item on a ballot would do what Lynn described, regardless of the language. I don't think the language really will make much of a difference because the campaign to make sure this passes is going to educate the voter the best. So the language is a language. We could wordsmith it to death today, and that'll be a 4-hour meeting, and we don't want to do that. I agree with Bob, and I think that language suffices, but, you know, and we have to educate people. With $500,000, that's what, 3 officers maybe? So maybe it'll help with the promise, but that's it. It's not offering much. That's why, for me, the TOT was never a viable way to fund public safety. We need much more than this, and those that are going to help with the campaign must tell that to the voting public, that to maintain and improve for now until we find another solution. This is Band-Aid. This is maybe to ensure that we can get those 3 officers every year until we find another solution for funding. And so I guess I'm in the same opinion that for today, the language should suffice. For this November ballot, it should suffice. Because you're right, Lynn, the language is usually studied for months before it's ever published, but we just don't have that kind of time. Okay, so I'll entertain motions regarding A, B, C, D, and E. I think we should do everything with one motion.
Yeah, approval of the resolution will cover all 5 items.
Okay, so
I'll move that we approve the resolution which approves various actions related to a proposed general tax ballot measure for the November 8th, 2022 general municipal election.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those against?
I'm against the language only, so did you all vote yes?
Yes.
No.
Okay. So we move on. Consider action related to annexation of territory, annexation number 73, T6208, northwest corner of Dakota and Highland, T6203, northwest corner of Dakota and Thompson, and T6161, southeast corner of Ashland and Thompson, and T6340, southwest corner of Ashland and Thompson, to the City of Clovis Community Facilities District, number 2004-1, Police and Fire Services, and our presenter would be Jay Shingle. I always mess up your name, don't I? Oh, was that pretty good? Okay, take it away, Jay.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Mayor, you do have in front of you the script that we follow.
Should have a script here. Okay. Do I go first?
Yes.
This is the time and place for the public hearing in this council's proceeding for Community Facilities District number 2004-1. The hearing is to acquire annexation number 73 into the district and to the levy of special taxes for annexation number 73. Before I formally open the hearing, is there anyone who wishes to file a written protest? If so, they must be filed with the city clerk now. Anyone wishing to file a formal protest? See no one in the chambers online?
No.
No one. This hearing is now open. We will first have presentations by staff about annexation number 73. After that, we will receive comments and questions and any oral protests from any interested person. When all comments have been received, the hearing will be closed.
On April 18th, 2022, the council heard a request by the affected property owners to include territory at T6208, northwest corner of Dakota and Highland, T6203, northwest corner of Dakota and Thompson, T6161, the southeast corner of Ashland and Thompson, and T6340, the southeast corner of Ashland and Thompson, and identified in a detailed map as CFD annexation number 73 to the city's CFD 2004-1. Tonight's actions will finalize the annexation process by holding a public hearing and property owner election.
Okay, thank you, Jay. Is there any comments, questions, or protests from the audience present here at the chambers? See none. What about the web?
None.
Okay, thank you. We may now consider and adopt the resolution annexing territory annexation number 73 to Community Facilities District 2004-1, which will annex territories described in the boundary maps to the district and call a special property owner election, which will call for the property owners vote to approve the special tax and the appropriation limits for annexation number 73.
I will make that motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Will the clerk please announce the results of the property owner vote?
For annexation number 73, we received 3 ballots representing 53 votes indicating passage.
Okay. The record shows that the property owners' votes are unanimous and in favor of the levy of the special tax and the establishment of the appropriation limits. We may now proceed to the final actions for the district.
Sorry.
You move for adoption.
Sorry. Sorry, Bob. I feel pressure. I'd make a motion that we approve the resolution declaring the results of the special landowner election and directing the recording of the notice of special tax lien for City of Clovis Community Facilities District number 2004-1.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. So it's 5-0. The motion carries. And that concludes item 8. 9, I'm sorry. I'm one behind. Consider number 10, consider approval of declare results of election regarding an assessment increase in landscape maintenance number 1 and resolution confirming the diagram and assessments for the 2022-23 annual levy for landscape maintenance number 1, District 1. And Glenn Estes will be our presenter, Assistant Public Utilities Director.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. So, as you recall, on May 16th, we closed ballots and started the tabulation process on a rate increase for LMD1. And the results of that election were Zone 1 pass with 63%, so yay. So we're going to try and do some, with those funds, about $300,000 a year extra. So we'll be able to increase some of the pruning that we've not been able to do on the trees, get those trees to grow better. And then amend some of the soil and replant some of the areas where you've seen plants die off over time. and they continue to die off, so we'll be doing that, then try and build some reserves, so we don't have to keep coming back for rate increases, but can save up enough to continue to maintain that area correctly. For Zone 5, wrong way. Oh, sorry. So Zone 5 failed by 2 votes. That's the same number it failed in 2016.
No way.
2 votes.
It's a conspiracy.
Yes. So, it's a little depressing, but, we have to make some changes there. Eric will kind of go over the number of changes that he'll need to do to try and get some of those funds back, because we are in the negative at this point.
Was that in the Loma Vista area generally, this particular area?
This area is going to be west of the Loma Vista area. So Loma Vista area is funded and has rate increases built into it. This is kind of an older area, so it's going to be south of Herndon, east of Sunnyside, west of Locan. And that's the park area in that area.
Just the park area in that.
Just parks.
All right, thanks.
Yeah.
Say it again where it is. We're discussing this. Where is it again? Zone 5?
Zone 5 is going to be south of Herndon.
Do I live in Zone 5? That's really the question.
You live in the area of Zone 5, yes.
I never got this ballot. I'm confident.
Well, you're not paying into the Zone 5 zone, but you are in that region.
So I didn't get to vote.
That's correct.
Darn it. I would have voted for it. Could have been a one.
Well, you needed another partner, because
Yes.
we need 2 votes, so.
Jeff and I both votes. Could have been a tie. Then what we've done. All right, that's why. Okay, that's too bad.
Well, Mayor and City Council, good evening. I'm here to go over the bad news, the cuts. A lot of the parks we were already mowing every other week. A few of them we were mowing every week. We're going to have to implement a zone-wide mowing of every other week. The parks that we were mowing every week, the grass was growing too high, and it just became just too difficult to maintain at that level. So we're going to consider turning the water down and trying to slow the rate of the grass growth. It might get a little brownish, tannish, but we have to make those cuts. We'll try to go to edging maybe once a month. We're not going to be able to replace any major playground equipment. If there's something major that's broken, we'll probably have to remove it and then put a blockade there in the playground. We did some repairs last year to some of the safety surfacing after an audit, and so we spent our reserves doing that. So now we have to cut, and we have to build reserves, and we have to maintain with what we have. We were considering distributing flyers also to the residents and making them aware what to expect.
Would signage be too expensive? If, the browning of the lawn is due to...
We can look at that. We can look at that.
No, it was the apathy too, because only, 30% or so returned their ballots?
Yeah, we have 30% return ballots, yeah.
Very low return. We're going to continue to inspect the playgrounds, though, and go by and empty the trash. We'll continue to make them as safe as possible. They just won't be as aesthetically pleasing. And if there is a major repair, we'll have to remove that apparatus. But we can definitely look at signs.
Sorry, John, did you want to say something?
Well, I was just going to add that somewhat related to this, with the state's emergency declaration of a drought and what's going to be imposed coming down the road, Public Utilities is going to come before council probably June 20th and give you an update, and it's going to have an impact on how we do all landscaping citywide.
I thought that was only going to be on commercial businesses and ornamental.
It is, that's the beginning.
And the parks would not be?
Correct.
Okay. When's the next chance if I may? Yeah. When's the next chance we can put this in front of the voters again? Because I think that this might...
Yeah, I believe we have to wait at least a year before we can put it in front of voters again.
All right.
Yeah. So we'll be back about a year to talk about if we want to do that or not. You know, it's the second time it failed, so if we start receiving feedback of why it failed, or then we can kind of address those issues next time around. We can kind of identify what it is. So that's the results of the election. So now we recommend you conduct a public hearing and then approve the diagrams and assessments for levying the rest of the zones within Zone 1. So I believe there's 15 zones that receive increases, 5 that are receiving decreases, and the rest will maintain the same rates. And with that, that concludes our presentation.
Any more questions for staff? Okay, I'll open it to the public. Anyone wishing to comment on this item here present? Anyone on the web?
No.
Bring it back to the council.
I'll move that we declare the results of the election regarding an assessment increase in landscape maintenance district number 1 and approve the resolution confirming the diagram and assessments for the 2022-23 annual levy for landscape maintenance district number 1. Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That's 5-0. Huh? It is 5-0.
Thank you.
Next item, consider a request from Clovis Big Dry Creek Historical Society for the City Council to create a Historical Preservation Commission. And staff member will be our Assistant City Manager, Andy Hausler.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the Council. Staff is in receipt of a request to the City Manager from the Clovis Big Dry Creek Historical Society to form a Historical Preservation Commission. A Historical Commission role, and the City of Clovis does not have one, is to be a commission that can vary as determined by City Council. Many similar commissions in other cities review historic resources such as buildings, sites, structures, etc., to determine what should be recommended as to be designated for protection, subject to City Council approval. And the Commission may also serve as an additional reviewing advisory body and reviewing and making recommendations on designated site applications. So land use applications can be part of that Commission's role. Historical preservation in Clovis is addressed in our general plan. The open space and conservation element, goal number 2, natural, agricultural, and historic resources, promotes preserving and promoting key features in our community. This is implemented in the following policies. Policy 2.9, under national and state historic resources, is to preserve historical sites and buildings of state or national significance in accordance with the Secretary of Interior standards for historic rehabilitation. Policy 2.10, local historic resources, encourage property owners to maintain the historic integrity of a site. Preservation, adaptive reuse, or memorialization are ways to do that. Policy 2.11, Old Town, prioritize the preservation of the historic character and resources of Old Town. And Policy 2.12, Public Education, to support public education efforts for residents and visitors about the unique historic, natural, and cultural resources in Clovis. This is further implemented by the Central Clovis Specific Plan with design guidelines and language desiring to preserve the historic nature of the Old Town area, and in some other specific plans there are areas called out to preserve. So options for Council to consider tonight is to keep the status quo as currently determined in the general plan, or to direct staff to review historic preservation in the general plan update that is currently underway. This could determine any new goals, policies, or implementation programs, such as establishing a historical preservation commission or something else during that process. Or 3, to direct staff to bring back the necessary items for Council to consider establishing a historical preservation commission before completing the general plan update. Amendments or additions to the general plan would be required to define the role of the Historical Commission if it was done going forward. That concludes staff presentation. If you have any questions, I am available.
Questions for Andy? Well,
Andy, I'm trying to really understand why the general plan played such a critical role in the development of a commission in which the council directs. And so it seems like when I read it, it was just so much of the general plan. It had to be put in the general plan, or we can wait for the general plan update. And so why is that? Because is the personnel commission one in which it's in a certain document to, and so that's where it is. You know, couldn't it just be in an ordinance instead of a general plan? Because maybe something is not in there, but we can establish it. So I'm trying to understand that part of it.
My understanding is that the general plan provides potentially the guidelines and the standards to assess historic resources, and that is a guiding document for the commission or a council and staff to use going forward.
Can the commission develop that itself, though, without referring to a general plan?
My understanding is that the commission can advise on the general plan policies, but they would need to be incorporated into the general plan for those to become standards for the city to utilize.
And that's pretty standard at every other historical commission, is like, you know, the Fresno, the county one, it's in their general plan that lays out the guidelines?
If historic preservation is in every general plan or addressed in every general plan, and communities handle that differently depending on the resources that they're trying to protect. Some historical commissions are purely for advisory purposes. Some have review responsibilities as well.
Okay, so if we go with 3, then whatever is established will then sort of get incorporated into the general plan update, and as that process comes through, it'll become part of the general plan. Is that what I'm understanding?
My understanding, if we decided to move forward with a commission now, we would have to bring back a general plan amendment to incorporate that body and the requirements in the general plan, and then that body would act on those standards. Whereas item number 2 is to consider the historical preservation as a key interest during the general plan update, with outcomes to be determined on how to handle that.
And if members of the committee can speak to this later on as well, your experience with, does it have to be tied to the general plan? I was trying to look to see, and so I'm trying to appreciate the explanation from Andy on it. And so, let me see. Are there state and federal regulations in which we have to abide to as well, with, or even county, if we create our own? You know, there's that county one. Is there somewhere there has to be some continuity or certain related aspects of what we look for and what they require, or can we actually conflict with some of those?
I believe this would be a standalone body by our own standards. However, if a state or federal body establishes something as a historic resource in Clovis, it would most likely be included in our local listing.
Thank you, Andy.
Zero? It sounds like the existing general plan deals with local historic resources and Old Town specifically. If we gave direction to create this historical commission, would they be advisory, or I guess I'm just throwing this question, would they be advisory, or would they have a de facto power like the planning commission, where the planning commission, someone wants to do something or not do something with a specific building, and the commission says, no, we don't like that. Now that person would have to pay money to get it before the city council. What are other historic committees doing? Are they advisory, or do they actually have some statutory authority?
The answer is both. Some communities have an advisory body that analyze historic resources and put them on an interest list, and just to build awareness. There's also historic preservation committees that are also focused on reviewing any changes to those properties or any kind of applications for land use that could be considered by the Planning Commission and or City Council for approval. So it really be at the council's discretion as they set up that body.
And other than the Carnegie Library, are there any other buildings that would be on the radar? Because I can't think of any other than some of the facades in Old Town.
Yeah, Old Town as a whole was called out in our general plan because of the historic nature of that area. For instance, when Centennial Plaza was constructed, there was a strong interest in those buildings reflecting the historic nature, so the general plan guidelines and Old Town specific guidelines were used to govern how those buildings looked. As far as other structures in Clovis, I know there's some older homes, like water towers behind them that have garnered some interest. There's the Dry Creek, I think, elementary school arch. I might be wrong on the name of the school, up there off of Shepherd and Peach. Garfield, sorry. That is also something that is called out in the civic plan to try and preserve. But to the extent of my knowledge, there could be others in the community.
Thank you. Anyone else? Drew? Well,
yeah, thanks. So it appears to me that we already have some language from 2014 that is in our code, and we already probably should have developed a historical preservation board, and that apparently is in Chapter 9.120 of our code. So we apparently have put language in there to already have a historical preservation board. The responsibilities are simply to promote the cultural, economic, educational, and general welfare of the city through the preservation and protection of buildings, site structures, areas, and districts of historic significance and interest. I think that, you know, as a council member right now, I really would like to have identified for us what, first of all, what we believe are kind of the historical sites and buildings within the city of Clovis. And then once that's been identified, I think that we can probably have this board develop standards consistent with how it is they came to these determinations, and then we can kind of project forward if there's another, you know, request for something to be identified as historic in nature, then we can probably do that. Now, I think that we're not going to be creating a California Coastal Commission where we have a bunch of unelected people who are making decisions on, development for the city of Clovis. Our idea is first to, I think, identify and then make some recommendations as to standards. That may be the end of the board after they have done that, but that's going to be up to us. As far as the whole interaction with the general plan, I'm not confident yet that there is to be any need for the board to have any role in the general plan, other than perhaps maybe identifying for the general plan committee, and then perhaps adopt it into our general plan some of the standards or designations that have already been adopted. So it really is just kind of it's up to us kind of decision here. We've already made the decision in 2014. I think we probably ought to act on that. And what that board looks like and what their responsibilities are is probably going to be a council direction type of conversation that we should have. So from my perspective, at least, I believe that we should have this historic preservation board. I believe that they should identify those areas within the city of Clovis that are considered to be historic in nature. And then, hopefully just some recommendations for standards that we can adopt going forward should another request come up in front of us as to, a historic building. And that identification on its own should, at least in my view, not come with it any additional protections. It's just really kind of noticing us that, hey, this is something we really want to think about, because there could be some impact if we choose to eliminate it or have development take place over it. So those are my views. I don't know if there's anything that staff, legal, or Andy would have that maybe pushes back on that, because I didn't really frankly understand why there would, and I'm just looking at that first sentence on the second page of the staff report, where it is really the second full paragraph. It says, it is likely amendments and or additions to the city's general plan would also be required for the Historic Preservation Commission to determine standards to apply. So get the likely and then be required, and I see some inconsistencies there in that first sentence. I think basically it's going to be up to us to determine what role this board should be playing in the general plan. Those are some of my thoughts.
Yeah.
I agree. I think it's time to have this. I think what I think about is we have been really lucky in the city of Clovis to have longtime employees who remembered the stories and all of that. And as that goes away, I think people are younger than I am. So, you know, younger staff are going to need to be reminded about why Clovis is different. So I agree with Bob. I think we need to establish it. I think they can really do policies 2.10, 2.11, and 2.12. Public education would be a really important role of that. Many cities have address plaques that say historical building. I think there's lots we could do as a city to make Clovis more of a destination, and I think their input into the general plan, serving on the committee with that lens, is going to be really important. So I think over time it is the right thing to do, and I think it's probably the right thing to do in 2014. It's definitely the right thing to do today. So, and I think we can establish the board today and do the general plan, and we don't have to. We can establish it and we can do two things at once. So I don't think we need to stop and amend and all that and then do a new general plan. I think we can do them simultaneously.
My 2 cents. I also was a little confused with that language that Bob quoted, because it sounded to me like one that have to be, what you explained, I think. You said it had to be a general plan amendment to come before us after we constitute the commission, right? So can, yeah. And then give the general plan, tell the general plan what is going to change because of this commission, right? Or something close to that?
So my understanding, and I'll lean on Scott so correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, but in the 2014 code update, this board was defined in our code. However, it was never actually set up and created. It was defined. So in order for us to move forward with the body as defined in our current code, we would need to amend our zoning ordinance and maybe some other documents.
Our zoning, why so much? If it's an advisory board that is accountable to the council, why must we have all, because they'll be dealing with issues that pertain to the general plan, but why would it prompt a general plan amendment just because we constituted this commission? Or zoning, or because they'd be advisory, then if what the recommendation to us requires a general plan amendment, then we do that, right?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, to your point, we don't know whether it's advisory. It hasn't been established yet.
Okay, so that's the question then.
Right. So the zoning code would certainly need to be updated to define what the authority of this commission is. Is it advisory? Is it simply creating a list of historic sites that the planning commission then deals with in the council? Or do they have basically would an applicant be required first to submit an application to this commission and get thumbs up, thumbs down from the commission, and then maybe have appeal rights to the planning commission or city council? So really it's, as Andy said in his original presentation, some of these commissions in other cities have ultimate say-so on development entitlements for sites on the list. Council, no say on that. Other cities have it as just simply an advisory committee that might provide advice to either the director on certain applications that can be approved by the director, would provide advice or recommendations to the planning commission, and then advice and recommendations to the city council. So the zoning code, although it did have a definition for such a commission, never established the commission, never said it's 5 members, 7 members, 9 members, you know, what the authority is. So we would certainly have to create that in the zoning code. We also have not done an extensive deep dive in the general plan to see if we would have to also make certain amendments to the general plan. That's why I think the language was a little bit iffy in that. It's possible. It's very possible. We haven't, staff and I haven't not done a deep dive into the general plan to see what may need to be amended. But the zoning code certainly would have to be updated.
So today, it might be just a day that council gives direction to what we need to be brought back to council for approval as far as, the level of authority this, commission might have? Because if that's the question, then I get it. Because I don't think I was prepared to form a commission tonight or do anything that, you know, as significant as that. I think more study is needed, and I need to know more about what we want to create. And for me, I would say an advisory board, very similar to what we did with public safety. But it could be a standing committee. It doesn't have to go away. It could be something that is always standing and monitoring what's happening in Clovis, specifically for historical buildings, and do what Lynn said, you know, that educational part, because, you know, there is a trend in America right now to destroy everything that has been here for the last 250 years, and I'm not good with that. I'm not okay with that. I think there has to be some preservation. And what better way than to preserve our history than to have a society that, or a commission that would be advocates for why something should be preserved. I mean, how many statues are being torn down throughout America, and it's like Lincoln, you know? So I can't believe that Lincoln is not cool anymore. But that's the world we live in today. So I think Clovis having a historical preservation commission is good, but we should limit its authority. That's my 2 cents. Well,
thanks. I just had kind of a question related to the zoning code and our municipal code. They're 2 separate entities that govern us. Is that right, Scott?
The zoning code is a portion of the municipal code, but it's specific to development. It contains all the provisions really specific to development.
So I did a quick look on our municipal code, and I looked under 9.120, and I'm not seeing anything there. So it could be that I'm looking in the wrong place. But it appears as though Chapter 9.120 just has definitions, and it addresses a lot of development issues, but it seems odd to me that we might have that wrong, because I'm not finding it in our municipal code. I don't know, Vong, if you looked it up. So.
Yeah, it is just a definition in our code.
So I'm not even finding the definition, at least on the Clovis Municipal Code that we have through codepublishing.com. So that was just a question. If it's there, great, and maybe we can work from it. The reason I wanted to look it up, I wanted to see if there was anything more in that code section other than what was italicized in the last paragraph of page 1 of our report, staff report. Are you finding it over there? She's Carrie looking at it?
She's looking it up.
Okay. All right. Okay.
We
So
may have an incorrect reference in the staff.
okay, that's fine. Just let me know what it is so I can look it up to see if there's anything else related to it other than what the language is in that italicized portion of the staff report.
So, if it is listed in our code, technically, because of that, we can establish one. And then whether or not it requires a general plan update is just, yeah. So, but I just keep reading it as it requires general plan update before it can be established. And so that was my confusion, because I felt kind of like what Councilmember Whelan said. It already says we have it. So if it says we have it, we can kind of direct staff to go and establish one and bring us the guidelines, and then we can look at it. And if something should come up that requires a GPA, then we'll do it then. Or am I not understanding that, where you can establish a council, but the general plan also has to have these guidelines or this commission in it before it can be effective. And so I keep reading it like that, but I don't know. I wanted to read it the first way, but from the way I've seen it presented to us tonight, I keep seeing that there's extra staff. The general plan has to be there. So. But general plans in general, I mean, throughout the state of California must have this as an element, right? The historical stuff. Right?
Usually that section that it's in is required, and historic preservation is included in that.
In every general plan of every city, or should speak to it.
It should be considered, yes.
Yes, and so that's what we did in our general plan. We considered that question, and we have answers to those questions. But this would be a more formalized, a committee or commission that does a little bit more than what the general plan requires, but it's up to us as a council to give that authority, or whatever level of authority. It could be just advisory, it means people can come to them, and whether it happens or not, it's still up to the council.
Yeah, I think the general plan would need to be addressed if there was inconsistencies between what council directed and what the general plan states in regarding historic preservation.
Mayor, I do want to say with regards to the advisory part, I do want some teeth in what is recommended, in that, yes, their recommendation will be advisory, but if we should approve it, it stays. So in other words, there has to be something in which, after it gets on, it's hard to get off. But we may be the final say if it gets on. But if it's just their advisory and it's just advisory and it can go on and off at any time based upon that commission, then I think you lose the reason for establishing a commission that brings something forward. Yeah, so advisory and that.
I've reminded the last 22 years of Councilmember Whalen.
Don't listen to him.
If our sacred document that we call the Constitution can be amended, the general plan can be amended. So us five, we might want this, and we might want historical preservation, and we don't appreciate people knocking things down because it still reminds us, maybe we're a little older than others. But the next council may have a different opinion, and legally, I don't think we can. Well, I mean, that's a question for our city attorney. I don't. Another council could change their mind.
Absolutely. You couldn't bind another council, but I think to your point, you could add a supermajority vote requirement in order to make a change subsequently, but it's still right. And then just for point of clarification, the staff report references chapter 9.120 for the definition. It's actually in 9.120.010. So it's further down in, it's 9.120.010 is the definitions in the zoning code. Got to go a little bit further down, so apologies.
I knew that.
Well, I only say that, Mayor, because I want whatever is decided by those who have history and those who are at that moment in time approving something being historical to stay historical in Clovis. So, for example, we spoke about this when we were talking about the naming of the Harry Armstrong and the Smith Camp. You know, I don't want it where next year a different council says, I don't like Smith Camp, let's take the name down. So how do we make it where it is harder? Because we will always find fault, we'll always find a reason, but if we can create now something that, you know, for example, even if it's the floor is home, you know, that becomes historical. I want it so it stays historical instead of like someone can just come and say, oh, get rid of it. Yeah. And so I agree that maybe it's advisory to us, but once we decide, how do we establish policies that make it more long-lasting?
So supermajority language could be added to anything. So is that our direction to staff as they put together what we want to see in a commission? Oh, you want to hear the public? Okay. Okay. I think it's time to open it to the public, so if you have any comment on this item, please come up and let us hear it.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Sarah McFarland Miller, and my office address is 4250 North Highland Avenue, Clovis. This is a historic building that our family moved out of the way of progress, 40 acres of housing development, which Clovis needs, and we rescued it by moving it 5 miles to the east and putting a windmill on it, and you will see this in the Loma Vista logo. And this is how committed we are to saving the history of Clovis as an amenity to our neighborhoods that let people know that we are a very unique and special community, and we never intend to become just one more suburb of a city. We are our own city with our own historic story, and we want to maintain that. And I can understand why young people may not be able to come up with a list of historic buildings in Clovis, because they weren't part of your history. We shop in different places, and we go to school in different places, and everything starts to look kind of homogeneous. But when many of us were children, Clovis was just 5th Street, 4th Street, 3rd Street, and every one of those buildings along 4th Street, Dr. Pendergrass's office and the hotel and buildings across the street, they may not look like anything to other people, but that's what makes it Old Town. And so we have an iconic building, this Carnegie Library that we love so much, and it's quite amazing. I was going to read you some of the comments that are on our website, Save Our 1914. That's as far as you need to type because it'll come right up. And you can see how poignant this is to people. And they don't just talk about the Carnegie Library. They say, another building in Clovis? And so people are watching what's happening, and they feel strongly about it. And so what I had proposed when I have talked to some of you, and what I'd really proposed to John Holt, was that we form a committee. Not that we would become commissioners, but a committee to say, how do we go about this? And how do we act as ears for you in the community to tell you what is the community sensitive to? Because we could just make one list, but you know, I was president of the Fresno County Historical Society for a long time, and we were nervous because time's going by, and you say, we're not saving anything from 1950 or 1960. That's pretty history. It's like, we don't tend to think things are old enough until they're well over 100 years old. But as each year goes by, more and more things become historical. So you can't just make one list. You know, time rolls on. So I think what I would recommend is that we talk about creating a study committee to say, how would we best go about this? Because I don't think we're asking you to commit to a commission that has teeth in it, although it's well recognized that councils can pass with the best intentions measures, but if they have no teeth, they tend to become forgotten. You know, just the 4 policies here speak strongly to Clovis's commitment to doing this, but unless we had brought this up and it was in front of you, we don't really remember that. It's just words. So let's put some action to the words and create some kind of a committee to bring to you, how would you like to do this? How many teeth would you like to put into this? And we don't need to overdo it. We just need to be your ears out there and your community memory of what's important. I think that this is very timely because you are launching into a general plan update. So by the time that all starts to be a discussion, by then we may have studied enough that we can, have some kind of sense of consensus about what we're contributing to that process. And there's always that talk about, well, what if people want to do improvements and this commission won't let them? And I will say, it depends on what the definition of improvements are. So I would recommend that this commission be made up of particularly well-regarded architects who know about historical preservation, because these are experts in what's an improvement and what isn't. And the current desire to put up styrofoam and paint it with a lot of paint and call it historic looking, that isn't actually historic. So anyway, those are my thoughts, and I believe other people would like to speak as well. But we are so grateful that you brought this forward, and thank you, John Holt, for your help in bringing this promptly to the council.
Sari, I've got a question for you, if you don't
Sure.
mind. So I don't know if you were aware, but there is a letter from the Building Industry Association that's on the dais, and it suggests that we go with option 1, which is basically status quo. So there may be some folks in the community who would prefer that we not be more assertive in this area. And I was wondering how you might feel about having this board also have some viewpoints that are going to say, well, if you identify this as historic, this may be the result that may not be good. And so kind of some voices that are perhaps of dissent to the idea of asserting kind of a historic preservation for certain areas. Because I think, frankly, you can't have any board that may be going a little overboard. But, for example, the piece of property, the McFarland piece of property, there has been a recognition of the McFarland family in the city of Clovis for years. There has been an understanding that, home place has been an area that should be preserved. But if there was a board that said, well, it's not just the structures on this particular piece of property, but the full land, like 40 acres or whatever, right? Then that could be a challenge for those who wish to develop in that particular area. So I didn't want to get too personal with the example, but frankly, it's one that hits home. So the dissenting view, I think, is going to be important, to me at least, in a board that is out there. So how do you feel about having maybe somebody from BIA sitting on that?
I applaud that idea. I always feel you have a better discussion when you have various points of view. I've been asked to participate on boards where it's like a short thing to vote our way, and I think that's the worst way to solve your problem. Be sure and have the person who disagrees with you there, because then those people won't feel heard. So BIA is a bona fide, distinguished organization, and they can send a representative to this, of course, because it would make a better discussion. And I will say, my sister lives in Paris, Texas, and her family's been there for many, many generations. I think they have 1887 on their logo or something like that. They've been builders there, and they save old buildings, and it's a gene. And she said they've established this kind of organization, and it has enough teeth that it's actually, as people in construction, it's hurt themselves. She said, so, be prepared that you'll get bit by, the same thing you're trying to promote. With the home place, in the specific plan, we were given a certain number of lots, and so we chose to hold back the home place and diminish its worth because there are no lots available for that. And so it was self-imposed idea that we would do this. And so I think that we would want to be very careful about any big tracts of land. We're not trying to save the historic Harlan Ranch or something like that. You know, we're talking about specific buildings that mean something to someone, and until we made it well known that there was such a thing as the McFarland Ranch, nobody else was even aware there was such a thing. But I do think that, you know, keeping important buildings as we reach the limits of our sphere of influence, there are going to be buildings out there that we weren't aware of before. But I don't think it's our plan to impose, to tell people your house is a historic home and you have to keep it forever. That's not, these are more like public buildings that we're looking at, that the people feel they belong to the people, you know. So, does that answer your question?
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to comment on this item?
We all have the same T-shirt on. Somebody has to say something. Mr. Newman.
Might as well since I'm here. I agree, and I know it's in the general plan. I would just caution, you know, as it starts to unravel all sorts of hypotheticals on limiting future property rights, you know, for building owners. And I'm talking from my, you know, real estate perspective, not from the chamber and our building, you know, and their desire to save it, but, you know, it can open up a can of worms in the future. So I just, you know, think about, you know, when you establish it, you know, if it's advisory, great, but you want to make sure that what you're trying to do is preserved, the flavor and the fabric of Clovis, but still, you don't want, you know, somebody, if they needed to sell their property and there's not going to be any buyers because there's so many limitations on their property moving forward. So that would just be my only caution moving forward. And just, you know, think about how you're going to establish it and make sure that you've really thought through the worst case scenarios, so to speak. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to move on to the web. Anyone on the web?
No.
Okay, so bring it back here to the council. Then?
Well, I agree with Sarah. I think that we should activate the zoning code from 2014 and establish and activate the board. And I think a group of citizens to advise what that might look like, whether it's the folks in your letter or all of you or some combination, I think that's right. And then bring back to the council what it might look like. You know, maybe there's sort of advisory and they have no, you know, whatever the levels of kind of authority, but I think you've heard the council. We don't want it to be a fee. We don't want it to be a deterrent to development. We don't want to infringe on property rights. So very mindful of that. But I think the spirit of why Clovis, I said it last time, I do not want kids to grow up thinking that Starbucks is the center of any town. With all due respect to Starbucks, that's not how towns and communities are built. So I think that role is super important. So I would ask that we give that direction to staff. You've heard enough from us, I think. You can do the work now. You can do the general plan when it's time to start that, and then they can meet up wherever they meet up. But I think we can begin that process now to bring this 2014 9.120.020, for the record, into fruition. Thanks.
Any other comments? I also support this. We've already kind of codified it. We create a historic preservation board. We come up with I like having, you know, architects who understand restoration. I have a friend who does that for the National Park Service. Having some expertise, having the ability to, for the planning department, for the planning director, if there's something being planned, he or she can reach out to the board and just find out what the voice is out there. The same board can go before the planning commission and either support or advise against something, and then if something comes before us, the board still has the same ability. This way we hear their voice. I don't think it should be a regulatory board, a commission, but you know, we're gonna listen to what everybody says when they come at the podium anyway. And having people who have a stake in historic preservation of what
was Clovis and will continue to be Clovis is important.
I was just going to make a motion. Is a motion in order, or do you think we just have given enough staff direction to come back at some point in the future?
I don't see an action item. I see more like the request, but I like Siri's recommendation. I mean, we just did it with public safety as far as forming a committee of stakeholders that, as Siri suggested, would put together for the city and the council what this formal committee would look like. And then we decide at the end, and maybe give us a few options of what it would entail, or so.
Well,
I don't, do we need a motion for?
I don't know. Andy, do you feel like you have enough direction?
Yes.
John?
Yes,
okay.
I do.
All right.
So we'll get it started as far as staff has direction, and we'll find a way to get this done in short order. Thank you for bringing it forward. So. Okay, next item. This was brought by you. Consider approval to submit a letter of opposition to Assembly Bill 2550, Arambula, State Air Resource Board, San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District. Staff is our City Manager, John Holt.
Thank you, Mayor. Assembly Bill 2550 was authored by Assembly Member Arambula. This legislation relates to air quality attainment that could give more control to the California Air Resources Board, or CARB, to reach air quality standards. This bill would require CARB provide technical support and guidance to any air pollution control district that has failed or is unable to achieve national or state air quality standards, and to assist the district in achieving them. Bringing it closer to home, basically AB 2550 seeks to require additional involvement by CARB over the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District. Opponents of the bill would say that the valley's air is improving, and the district is already working with CARB. The status of this, it was approved by the Assembly on May 25th, and now it's on to the Senate. This item was added to the agenda at the request of Councilmember Bessinger, and I'd like to turn it over to him for comments.
Yes, thank you. But what this legislation would do is, in the event that the 8 Valley counties do not come within the EPA attainment of the Clean Air Act, it puts CARB as the primary mover and shaker in this, and basically relegates the air district to second fiddle. And what it does is it's going to create, like something we've seen with Measure C recently, it's going to create a bunch of community groups that aren't defined. We don't know how many. And the environmental justice groups, sometimes they do good things, sometimes it's just politics by another name, quite frankly, in my opinion. If you recall, maybe a month after the pandemic hit, our skies were clear. And the reason they were clear is because we didn't have as much traffic. This basin would be in attainment if it wasn't for the 70% of the pollution we get is coming from mobile sources, which are diesel trucks, automobiles, and the failure of the state and federal governments to manage our forests, which have gone up in flames, and that certainly is a serious degradation of the air, of the climate. I had this conversation on a One Voice tour 3 years ago with a congressman's staff, and I was talking about forest management, and he looked at us like we were just bumpkins that fell off a turnip truck. It was very aggravating. And then 6 months later, we had the Creek Fire. And, this legislation is well-meaning, but I think that the long-term effects on this will actually slow down the ability of the Air District to make the improvements they need to make. We're going to have so many cooks in the kitchen, it's going to be a mess. So I would hope, and my recommendation is that we send a letter of opposing this legislation to the Senate, because it's going fast, and we're going to have, I mean, they're going to be going on vacation here soon, so we need to move fast.
Drew, who is responsible for managing that 70% of mobile sources that pollute the air?
The Environmental Protection Agency. And we have no mandate over any of that.
So that's the state or the federal?
Federal government.
Okay. All right, thank you.
My 2 cents is that there's some numbers that we will never attain because nature itself and our sun and our valley, just our geographic location in this basin means that we'll never attain some of these numbers. Ozone comes to mind. And so nature itself exceeds EPA, is my understanding. And so, and then this is a no-brainer because we always talk about local control, and this is about local control. If we don't have a say, if our local electeds who represent us at this, the local district, then I think we can't roll over. So, all due respect to Dr. Arambula, I think it's a good intentions going straight to a bad place. Anyway, so any more?
Can I vent? I don't know if you were going to make the motion, then I saw you reach.
I was, but.
Oh, I need to bring it to the public first.
You do. You can do
so
that.
Are you ready?
And then I'll vent it.
Okay, so anyone in the public wishing to comment on this? None here? How about on the web?
No.
Okay, bring it back.
The vet first, or you want a motion?
Yeah, I'll give my hot air, which will probably contribute to the bad air. So one of my pet peeves is how sometimes I feel as though there are organizations that are unelected that are trying to gain more power. And this bill seems to fit within that mode where, at least in this country, we have a republic that has elected some folks to sit in positions where decisions need to be made. And there are community organizations and really just community members who have an opportunity to express themselves to that elected body. And as an elected official, we have a responsibility to listen, but also make that decision, because that decision needs to rest with us, not with some community organization who may have an ulterior motive or hidden agenda, which is not as transparent as ours has to be. So this bill, the part of it that's most concerning to me is how it is that it feels to me as though the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District is going to be kind of pushed aside, and that's made up of elected members. And what's going to be on an equal footing is a group of community organizations which are not elected, who have their own specific agenda in place. And that is offensive from my perspective, the principles of democracy and the principles of a republic, which we happen to be a blend of both here in the state of California. So I think that the wording of that opposition doesn't need to address those areas, because it's just going to be inflammatory, and I appreciate you letting me vent. But I think your point, though, Drew, about how it's the EPA who's in charge of the mobile sources, how it's the federal government and portions of the state government who are responsible for management of the forest, and then, frankly, Jose, to your point related to the unique basin that we live in, is why we are struggling in this particular area. It's not for a lack of will or desire. It's because of those factors. and for them to create, I can't say create this problem, but to not address this problem at the EPA level or at the Department of Agriculture with the Forest Service, and then all of a sudden, as a result of them not addressing it, they take power away from the elected people and give it to community organizations it just boggles my mind that we live in a society where this is even thought to be a legitimate type of legislation. But, you know, that's where we are. So, thank you.
I'll say a couple words. I am fine with as many people wanting to be involved as possible, as long as those who participate are treated equally. And what I mean by that is, if you're on the board with electeds, you are treated as an elected. You disclose everything, you are a public figure now, and then it's fair. But if you aren't, and you can hide behind hey, don't say it, I'm a private person, you know, don't disclose these things because these are my funds or this is where I'm getting funding from. But we aren't, you know, when we are sitting on these boards, we are treated, you know, we are public figures, and so because of that, we're an open book. And as long as everybody is treated equally when they sit on committees, especially with a lot of electeds, I am fine with that. Then it's a fair game and everybody's an open book. And so because of that, I think the intention is well-meaning, but currently I don't think this is the right time and the right way to do it.
Like a motion to send this letter? Would you like to make that motion?
I would like to make this motion. I move that we, as the City of Clovis, send a letter of opposition to the Senate, opposition to Assembly Bill 2550, which is now being considered by the State Senate. And we'd also be joining numerous other counties and cities who have also sending a letter of opposition.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you. It's unanimous.
Send a copy to Dr. Renflu's office?
Oh, he's going to get a copy. Yes, we should send him a copy. Next item, consider approval to submit a letter of opposition for Assembly Bill 2011, WICS, Affordable Housing and High Roads Jobs Act of 2022. And again, John.
Thank you, Mayor. This Assembly Bill 2011 was authored by Assemblymember Buffy Wicks out of Oakland. The bill would allow affordable housing to be built by right in infill areas currently zoned as office, retail, and parking uses. Developers of these commercial properties would need to pay workers prevailing wages. Projects of 50 or more units would require their contractors to make use of workers from a state-approved apprenticeship program and provide health benefits. In quoting the author, it promotes affordable housing development with a requirement creating high road jobs, meaning high pay. It requires ministerial approval of construction across the broad category of zones, including what I indicated, office, retail, and parking. This is a massive state taking the flexibility needed by the city to place housing where it best meets the needs of our community. CEQA is circumvented on these projects. Parking is not required for these projects. It is literally a complete disregard for the city's general plan. City finances are dependent on revenues from commercially zoned properties, and it would take finances away from the city. The current status is that it's passed through Assembly and it was referred to the Senate Housing Committee on June 2nd. That concludes staff's report, and I'm open for questions.
Questions for John?
I just want to vent.
I'd like to vent. This Assembly person, Buffy Wicks, last year, she put together it was a bill that dealt with the Oakland Bay Bridge Toll Authority, and then they gutted it and made it a COVID-19 vaccination mandate. This is the crapola that occurs in Sacramento, you know, to take away complete local control, and then, oh, we're going to make you do this, and not have parking. And everybody needs to get prevailing wage. It's just, this is politics as usual, unfortunately. And I think it's a bunch of garbage. Did I do well, Bob? Yes.
Juan?
This is starting to show the lack of influence that the league has on our legislatures. That we oppose this pretty strongly, and it has no effect. They'll keep moving it forward. Same thing with SB9, and so it's really getting to. I'm saying it's very close to that point where cities are going to go, what is local control? Because even if we vote as a league, as a committee, you know, as a whole league of cities to oppose something, the legislature just forgets about the cities and they'll just move their legislation forward regardless. And here's another one that's going to, I'm assuming it's already moved past the assembly, so it just keeps moving regardless of the position of the league of cities.
Now my turn to vent. And Wong is absolutely right. The league is weakened, but I think it has been weakened because there's a party that seems to elect social justice warriors, and they've infiltrated the league. So that local control mantra that we once had as a league, that's what's being diluted. So now with all these committees, maybe not the Public Safety Committee, but because that one's pretty tough. But all the other committees seem to have all these social justice warriors right there, and they're big advocates for this stuff. So I say we've been infiltrated because those who once stood for local control are being either not running anymore or are being voted out in certain communities, and that's, you're absolutely right, Wong. And therefore, the league loses power, loses it. So it's kind of sad. So, and
Mayor, I was just going to note that Cal Cities does have a position to oppose.
Yes. And as long as we're a one-party state, this is going to continue to happen. So.
I'll make a motion.
No, I thought you were going to vent. So before you make a motion, let me open it to the public. Anyone in the public wishing to comment on this item? Anyone on the web?
No.
Now
what am I going to do? Move that we send a letter in opposition to this bill. The people move.
Do I have a second? Second. We have 2 seconds. We have a motion, a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. So it's unanimous. Please send the letter. And that's the end of that portion of our agenda. And city manager's comments.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of things real quickly. On the dais in front of you, you've got the 5-year budget at a glance. If you get a chance to take a look at it, it's actually a pretty good document that summarizes our 300 or 400 page budget into 4 or 5 pages, whatever it is. So I'd encourage you to take a look at it. The second item I have is going to be that a reminder that we have a joint subcommittee meeting with Clovis Unified on June 23rd, and I think that's with Mayor Flores and Councilmember Wanatua. If you guys have any items that you'd like to add to the agenda, let me know or Andy know. And the final thing I have is going to be that we do have a letter of resignation from Roy Spina from the board for the Fmfcd, the Fresno Metropolitan Flood Control District. He served us well for 28 years. We're going to need to replace him. I sent you via email kind of what they're looking for. He serves through August. If I don't get any names, we'll start to advertise probably starting next week and then take a look at it and bring something back for council to consider probably July or August. That's it.
Thank you. Council comments. Wong?
I just want to congratulate all the Clovis High graduates and for things just going back to normal. It was good to just be back at a full graduation of all the local high schools and Fresno Unified, and even at the colleges and universities locally. So that's all I have. I think we have a housing committee meeting this Friday, so I'll report out next week on what is discussed.
I've really been enjoying running by the counter, which has been repaired. Last time we had a council meeting, I complained because it needs to be fixed, had to be fixed, and of course it had been fixed by the time I was making those comments. That's a confession that I hadn't been running as regularly, I guess, as I normally do, because I didn't notice it. So really happy that it's been repaired. It's functioning real well as far as I can tell. The other item is that I'm going to be out of town the first 2 Mondays of July, it looks like. So I probably want to make sure that we figure out how to, if I can call in, how we can make that happen. Or, you know, maybe I just won't participate. I'd hate to miss out on 2 in a row, though. So just wanted to give a heads up on that. That's it.
Drew?
As the alternate on the North Kings GSA, I attended a meeting about 2 weeks ago, and it was there was nothing to report out. Well, nothing I could talk about publicly, but I'll tell you later. Ben?
I know it's summer vacation, but I thought there was a story I read somewhere that Tarpey Elementary got a civic education award from the state. That is so awesome. So I believe, like the strawberry milk discussion, it's probably not helpful in the summer, but it would be fun to reach out to the principal and just see if she can rally any kids. We got to celebrate the little stuff, and that's a little thing, but it's a really important thing for those kids. It was some kind of a state civic education. They have, like, student councils. I mean, it was just all the stuff that I personally think is really important. But it's like strawberry milk. It's like strawberry milk. So just even a call to the principal congratulating her would be worth it. I think it looks like Andy saw the story. I can't remember exactly, but it'd be worth celebrating civic education. Thanks.
And what do I have to report? You listened to it? Yeah, I did attend the COG meeting, and there was a long testimony on during the COG meeting regarding Measure C. Again, they were all together at a location and and I question that. So can't in this with.
Sorry, but like that rule,
I actually kind of asked for clarification from the general counsel there. Can they do that? So we know we have COVID protocols that Newsom signed and then again reiterated regarding how we can conduct public meetings and circumvent some Brown Act laws. For us, we have to post no matter where we're at, right? As the council. So at least that's what I think we've heard here. But the public, they literally had one location where they lined up 20 people and all gave testimony. And I don't think it was open to the public. I think it was just one location. You say it was a taco truck? I didn't know where it was at, but it just didn't seem proper and in violation of the Brown Act, as far as even with Newsom's emergency policies, it just didn't seem proper, didn't seem fair that as a public entity we would have to post, but they didn't have to. I'm sure they didn't. They just invited people for tacos, and now that I'm hearing this, I hope it's reliable information. So, is it? I know what the governor wanted to do was make meetings accessible to people, and especially the constituency, not just us. It wasn't done for the legislative body. It was done for the purpose of facilitating access of the constituents. So, would it be proper? I think that's a unique situation. I haven't heard where somebody creates their own separate meeting and then they line up to give public testimony for a secondary meeting.
and it certainly sounds unique. I don't know that I could speak on it otherwise.
No. Can you look into it? Can you see?
Absolutely.
Does it, because the attorney there, I don't think gave me a good answer, but I just didn't want to fight it there because I was going to ask, can the public do that? Can I organize my own special public meeting and then call up on WebEx and then have 20 people testify?
Well, members of the public certainly can congregate in one area that wouldn't be necessarily open to other people. It's not on the agenda. Let's say we had a group of, for instance, the group that was here in their T-shirts. If they all wanted to get together in one location on their own and call in,
and then one by one
one by one, they certainly could do that.
Okay,
but that's not the agency requiring that they show up in that one location. They just chose to do so.
So the public can do that. We have other limitations.
The public could do that, yeah, if they wanted to, and the agency's not requiring it, yes.
Okay, so I guess, I think, that's why I didn't fight it strongly, because I think the spirit of that ruling, the law, the special policy that we have during COVID is access, public access.
And I guess I would add to that, I'm assuming that they didn't preclude any other public comments from others that might not have been in that one location where... No, because the chair was running the meeting. So. Right, it sounds like it was just a group of members of the public that decided all to gather in one spot, and not mandated by the agency, but they just chose to call in from that one particular location. There's nothing that would prohibit that.
Because it could happen here, too. We could have a 2-hour meeting here where people line up somewhere, and there's nothing we can do to say that. Well, we can give the limitations. Yeah, if you're going to start repeating the same, but they'll insist that their last 2 words are the most important words that exist.
Well, yeah, the agency shouldn't be held hostage with a group of members of the public necessarily that would make the meeting last several hours. You could certainly cut off public comment at a certain reasonable point, yes.
Okay, well, then I'll look to you for direction when that, we used to hear if it can happen, it will happen. So we saw it happening there, so it could happen here where someone organizes a marathon public statement somewhere else. Yeah, they'll filibuster us, so.
Absolutely. When that happens, if it happens,
you'll be prepared.
You can always hold public comment at the very end of the meeting after closed session where we reconvene. So
okay.
They could wait until 10 o'clock and nobody else would be there.
Sounds good. At this point, we're done with our regular agenda and we'll adjourn. I thought we had a closed session. Okay, yeah. We have 2 items in closed session. I just wouldn't. And for the record, we won't be giving anything out.